King's Dream Podcast, episode 4. We got a special guest with us today, a man of many talents, the connoisseur of the greatest clothing apparels North County has seen, one of the originators of Future Shock.
Actually, that's a lie.
Okay, Caps the Elusive. Ow!
Clapping once again.
I just did that scream because I don't know what to do.
It was perfect.
Caps is the original, awkward troll, bro. Before being awkward and trolling was in,
I like that.
he was the original.
So
I like that.
So me and Caps go way back. Caps discovered me on MySpace. No, not MySpace. On mp3.com.
Oh,
I wouldn't say I discovered you. I would say you found my house somehow.
Time traveling here.
This is what year was this? 2002, 2001?
It's somewhere around there, yeah.
2000 it was a while ago. We connected on mp3.com.
Sheesh.
What's mp3.com?
I don't know what that.
Eric.
I don't know what that is.
What was mp3.com?
So mp3.com was before your iTunes and your all the other services you guys have now. That was like one of the first places where people could download music for free.
Yeah.
Actually. So
Yeah, it was dope. They would pay you for streams, right? For the number of plays you got.
I don't even remember because I know Plastic from Sphere was the one who
Took all your money. Shout out to Plastic Sphere.
Hey, I wouldn't say he took all our money, but he was the one that I don't even know. I think at the time we didn't even know you can make money doing this stuff.
So I think that, and I also think they did like a direct mailer CD shipping thing for you.
Yeah.
Where,
did you distribution?
Yeah. So
Oh,
you
wow,
could
that's
upload
really
your
cool.
music on there, and then somebody can buy it, and they would actually print and send a physical CD.
Sometimes they would make their own artwork for your records.
Damn.
Yeah.
It was lit, dude. And so
What happened to it?
they got bought out by somebody, and they just collapsed. And then right as they collapsed, maybe a year or two later, maybe longer than that, 3 years later,
MySpace
before
vibes.
MySpace popped up on the scene.
MySpace vibes.
And MySpace was more broader and open to the community, to the community, the public. And people.com was very similar to SoundCloud, except you could actually monetize your art
Monetize and distribute. That's
which was
dope.
really cool. So me and Caps met. He was a part of a crew called Soul Seekers, and they had the #1 song on mp3.com.
Yeah.
right?
For
like
real?
you beat
Across
out.
the board?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it went #1 on a couple different charts, which for us was huge. Like we didn't expect that, but it was it was beating out like the Snoop Dogg's and the Q-Tips, and I guess at the time Silk the Shocker was like
Really
a big
popping.
deal.
So the Shocker is a big deal.
I guess.
Don't you ever forget
yeah. So we stayed at #1 for a while, which was cool. And then later on, I found out that when that song was at its peak, it was getting 100,000 downloads a day.
Sheesh.
For a while, which that's a cool thing to kind of hang on to, because I don't know that even happens anymore. But
That's before. This is before Napster.
I think it was right around the same time.
Right around the same time.
Yeah, because all that stuff started happening right around that time, and we really didn't know how to use that stuff to our advantage, and Plastic was real cool in helping us out with all that stuff. But so that was mp3.com, and then from there, we just started working and putting stuff out.
Yeah. So we met. I believe it was 2002. I remember I attended a Miles Ahead crusade.
Hey.
It was and Cross Movement was headlining. I think it was Cross Movement and POD. You know what Cross
Nice.
Movement is? So you don't got to answer that question.
I know POD.
You know who POD is?
I know who POD
Nice.
is.
So they were headlining, and
I know Cross Movement. Well, I just heard about them. I've never listened to any of their music, though.
Yeah, they were like the 116 of the era.
Yeah.
They were huge. And I had met Fanatic. I came to the show. I don't even think I was a believer yet. I was going to church. I was going to New Venture at the time. I came to the show and I met Fanatic, and it was really cool. And then around the same time, me and Caps were emailing through mp3.com, and literally a week after meeting Fanatic, me and you hooked up. I went to his house in Oceanside, right there by 76. I don't even know. Yeah, right off 76.
Yeah.
And I remember you walked out. Caps walked out, and he had these Mexican dreadlocks.
Okay, that's messed up, dude.
But yo, I thought you were like the coolest ever, yo. So he comes out, I was like, wow, he has dreadlocks. And then we get in the car and then we drive to the Rubio's in Oceanside off of El Camino Real.
Yes.
And in comes in Red, he was a white guy, a ginger white guy at that. And he has like dreadlocks down his back.
Hey.
White guy with like blondish red dreadlocks.
Yeah.
Straight like Aslan from Chronicles of Narnia vibe.
So what's the deal with that? Because Namas had dreadlocks too, right?
Namas came late into the picture.
It was just that era, man. It was like
West Coast thing?
you know, it was like an underground hip hop thing at the time, and by far mine never saw the success
Reds
of
were
locking
lit.
up like Reds
were
did.
lit.
Yeah, but
These were dope.
You know,
He
it was
looked like
one of those
that
things.
guy, the guy we were talking about yesterday, Todd.
Todd White?
They kind of had that vibe. They were long, dude. And so it was like, they think him and Sonny from POD went to the same dreadlock guy, right? Or something like that.
I don't know.
Initially, the guy who got them started, and
Probably.
Red Cloud had really cool dreadlocks back
Yeah.
then. So we met, and dude, and Future Shock just brought me in, and they just like dealt with a really...
So you skipped over a really good, important piece of that story. So we're at Rubio's, and Ru was, you know, he was younger and he was still figuring things out, and he came across a little differently back then. And I will never forget the day we left that Rubio's. Sorry, Red, if you didn't want me to tell him this, but Red pulled me to the side and he said, "Don't you ever bring that guy around me again." But
Sheesh.
the funny thing is, I think Ruslan and Red ended up having a pretty good relationship together, and there was a lot. I think Red learned a lot too about himself while helping mentor Ru. But
Yeah, it was cool, man. It was just a different era, and I think you guys being in my life that early was like, it was like exactly what I needed. From just a man mentorship standpoint, because I had men in my life at the time. I was brand new in the faith, and I had men in my life, but they were like in their 50s and 60s, totally culturally disconnected.
well, so was Red. Just kidding. Sorry, Red.
You guys were maybe 10 years older than me, something like that. You guys weren't much older. Red was a little older, but you guys weren't that much older, and so it was like from a practical standpoint, it's just like mentorship, and then spirituality and music and all that kind of stuff. But what was it like making music back then? Because we're talking the day before everyone having a home studio, the day before SoundCloud, before you just dropping your music whenever you feel like it and putting it out for the world to consume. You know, we had mp3.com, and then maybe a couple years after that.
What about iTunes? iTunes wasn't it.
No iTunes. No smartphones. How about just pre-smartphone era?
Like pagers.
Yeah.
It's a pager.
Let's not get into that. So I mean, it was different, and it definitely felt like, you know, because you had to book studio time with somebody who actually had a studio, like you didn't have, you know, access to the equipment like we do now. But so you had to pay for it, which was like, if you're going to pay for it, you better get in there and make something that you really believe in.
Right.
I remember our first project we recorded in a studio in Vista. It was a home studio, but it was like this. It was like the guy had some background in music, and he had everything. And we felt important, man. When we went in there, it was like, dang, this is cool, man. Yeah. Like for us, we made it. We were in a real studio, even though it was not like really a real studio. And, you know, we'd hear back our music, and we're like, man, this is the coolest thing ever, man. It sounds so good. And then now you listen to it and you're like, sounds like somebody's letting air out of a tire right next to the mic because the hiss is so bad, right?
Oh,
but
wow.
Back then you're like, dude, this is cool because that's all we had, you know? Right. And then over the years you start, you know, being able to collect little studio equipment here and there. And we eventually built one in my garage that we were able to function out of and record some cool projects. And, you know, it wasn't as easy, but I think it was definitely worth it. It taught us a lot about, you know, the craft and the art and being serious about what you do, because you're actually paying for it. You're actually investing in it. And at the time we were all young. We didn't really have a whole lot of money. So I remember asking my mom to borrow $100 to put out our first tape. And then I was on a payment plan to pay her back. Right. So it's like, I mean, you really had to make sure that what you were putting out, you really believed in. And I kind of, that's where I feel like it's different now. You know, everybody has access to recording, so everybody records and everybody makes music and everybody's a rapper. And it's like, there's no real quality control. There's no real anything.
Right.
You
That's
know?
what I would say. I kind of would argue, like, back then it's just kind of better, just in general, because people have to focus on their craft.
Yeah.
And so, like, with the oversaturated market now, like, I feel like it devalues music in general, and people just don't really take it that seriously.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I appreciate, like, I don't listen to very many people at all. And you know me long enough to know that I guess I'm kind of a hater, but I try not to be. But I mean, it's for me, it's like, you know, when somebody places importance into what they do, you can hear it, you know, like you guys are one of the few groups that I listen to, Propaganda. Mostly my friends, because it's like content and quality. And I know that when you guys do something, before you even put it out, you make sure that it's ready, you know, and you guys take those steps to make sure that people get the best stuff that you guys can put out.
Right.
And,
so let's talk about putting music out, right? Because you touched on the recording the recording aspect was different.
Right.
But what was it like putting music out? You said you borrowed $100 from your mom to put out a tape. What happened then? Okay, so you made tapes, and you made, 50 tapes or something like that?
Something like that,
So what
and
did
I think
you do
I still have 49 of them at my house.
What did you do with those tapes?
I mean, we try to sell them. Obviously, like, all your friends are like, oh, cool, you put out a tape, and they'll buy one. But, you know, we would try to sell them at shows, but shows back then weren't what they are now. Like, I look at video of what you guys have done and seeing Propaganda on tour and seeing all this stuff, and it's like, man, that's what we dreamed of. You know, you talked about POD a little bit earlier, and I remember hanging out with those guys early on where it would be like 5 people in a parking lot watching them perform, and we were 3 or 4 of them. And then to see where they got, right? So you can only imagine that when we were doing shows, it was like we would do a show and we might sell a tape or 2. But at that time, you know, hip hop wasn't really accepted in the church, right? Like, it was, you're lucky if you got a youth group here or there, but at that point, it was the devil's music, right? There's no way that this could be glorifying God, and so those were kind of the things that we went through, and I was kind of on the tail end of that. The Future Shock guys had started a few years earlier, before they started bringing just me and I along for the ride, but. So they kind of did some of that groundwork, and then, you know, selling merch was like, man, your friends, really, that's who you were dependent on, was your friends, because we didn't really get shows where there was a lot of people. Yeah. You know. So you
said, there's a lot there. You said, you know, church didn't accept hip hop. And you were like, if a youth group came around, that was like every now and then, like, that was dope. Now you got a lot of Christian artists complaining about playing in youth groups. You know, like the juxtaposition of the whole thing is totally different. Like, now we're like, we ain't trying to rock in no youth groups. We want to go to the club. But you guys literally couldn't play in churches. Right? There would be a few churches, and there was usually a church where you probably attended and you had a relationship with the pastor, and he knew you weren't a devil worshiper.
It was usually Red, the one, because he was pretty connected with that stuff. So it was like, we would do these shows, and we were happy. Like, oh, cool, we got a show.
I got to play for junior high kids. Like, this is lit.
Like 4 of them. We got to play for 4 junior high kids today. I mean, that's what's so incredible now, man, is like to see where it's gotten, and you know, I don't feel like I played a huge role in that, right? Because I just feel like we were doing what we thought we should be doing. And then, you know, I talked to some people that are in the game now, and they're like, hey, thank you for what you guys did. And it's like, for me, that's cool. Like, oh, man, we were a part of something big. But we were just doing what we were doing, man. We just wanted to do something that we believed in and who we were, and we didn't want to fall into those categories of being the suit. Like, we weren't trying to drag the streets into the church. We were trying to take the church back out to the streets because we knew that we could be effective that way. And it wasn't for everybody.
Yeah. And so you guys did a lot of events that were at clubs, at bars, at just hip hop functions that were not Christian events. What was that like, doing those types of events around an environment that I would say maybe was a bit more hostile towards Christians?
I don't think people really knew. Like, our music was our music, and I think really what we wanted to build off of was the relationships that we had with people, right? So, like, when you guys were doing the Good Religion record, and at the listening party, you asked, what does that mean to you guys? Like, for me, it's exactly what you guys are doing. Like, before somebody respects who you believe in or what you believe, they have to respect you, and you have to build these solid relationships. And that's really who we were. It was here's our music, and here's how we live, and here's what we're offering to you, but we're not going to kick it down your throat as a stranger. We want to show you. Like, one of the biggest things that I tell people about how I came to Christ was really when I met Ared and Ajax and Sojourn. They were already doing their thing.
Right.
I was this, 15-year-old kid doing my thing. I mean, it was, drinking, smoking, all this stuff. I would show up, and they just took me in. Hey, we're doing a show tonight at the church. Come check it out. I'm like, all right, I guess. I'd show up to these shows wasted. Church.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I noticed is they never pushed me away.
Yeah.
Like, they were always like,
yeah,
come on, little brother. And eventually I realized, like, dude, if these guys can love me like that in the condition I'm in, how much more will God love me? And that is why when I see, like, these beefs or, people screw up, right? And then people are like, oh, I'm not talking to them. They did. And it's like, man, that doesn't fix anything. That doesn't help. If anything, it pushes people away.
Right.
And so
there was, I sensed it, like, there was a genuine community amongst you guys, right? I remember having Bible studies in Red's backyard, you know what I mean? And Ajax falling asleep, because he had been working since like 7 a.m.
Ajax would fall asleep everywhere.
But I feel like that was something that you guys embedded in me, was the value of relationship, the value of community, the value of just doing life together. I remember you guys you did your own merch, but I remember for a season your wives got together and they would do their own line of knitted hats. That was so, so cool. And it would be all these different colors. And I never had one because I just thought I'd look super goofy trying to rock one of those. What was that? Like, how intentional were you guys about building a community that was not just for you, but that was really accepting of non-believers and guys that weren't really there yet? Like, how intentional was that?
Well, so the funny story about the knitted hats thing, or the crocheted hats, it was at one point we were like, this is a great idea. The girls are trying to start their business. They could come sell stuff at our shows. Yep. Well, when they started outselling us,
the merch,
on merch, and
wanted a cut,
and then people's excuse was, oh, sorry, we can't buy a CD because we just spent all our money on hats. Yeah. We were kind of like, man, we got to rethink this, man, because this, it kind of sucked at the time. The cool thing is, though, I remember several years, like years and years after a show, someone ran into my wife and I at a show and said, hey, do you still make hats? Because I still have I still wear the one that I bought from you guys like 10 years ago or something like that. That kind of stuff is cool, right? Yeah. Someone hit us up one time and was like, hey, do they still make them? Because I was telling my wife about them and we want to buy like 6 of them out of nowhere. So that stuff is cool. As far as being intentional, it was one of those things, that's just what we knew, man. And like, Red and Ajax, their family, I know that's kind of how they came up, they were always very open, and like literally they would leave their house unlocked at all times. And anybody was welcome to come in. I mean, so that's kind of what we did. That's all we knew is like, hey, man, you know, you may not believe what we believe, but you know, you can still be a part of what we do, and hopefully you'll see that light through us. Really, I think is what was important. It wasn't so much us trying to convert people or force it. We were like, hey, man, look, I'm just like you more than you know, but what I'm hoping is that you see what God's doing with me and see that there is, you know, hope there. And
how much do you think the community aspect actually attributed to your musical career success? Do you think that was a main part of it, or do you think there was something else that really attributed to the success?
I think that was a good portion of it. Now, as far as success, like, we really have to define success, right? Because for us, I just told somebody this story the other day. The more I thought about it, at the time, we felt like, why are we not more successful? Why are we not more popular? Why are we not making money off of this? And now that I look back, I'm actually really glad that we didn't get to a level that some of these other groups got to at the time, because I don't know that we were ready for that. You know, I've seen a lot of my friends whose relationships have fallen apart, whose families have fallen apart because of the industry, because of the tour life and all that. And for me, I'm like, man, maybe that was the plan for us, is that was success for us, is, hey, put out stuff on your own and kind of make your mark. But really the successful part is seeing you guys coming up and you guys doing this and seeing our friends, you know, doing their thing to because of
from where you left off.
I think success for me at the time, looking at you guys, like, you guys had albums in stores, right? Like, that was it. Like, I could walk into a store and pick up a CD with your freaking face on it. Like, I was like, yo, like, this is it. You made it. You know, you guys had vinyl, like, you guys had merchandise. So to me, in that era, like, you were on a label, you were signed. There was, you know what I mean? There was funding behind what you were doing.
And that's the thing, is like, what is it? Right? Like, I mean, it is cool. We have vinyl. When we got vinyl, I think that was the biggest thing for us. We were like, and the vinyl actually, I was able to be on that vinyl because that was the first song that I was on with Future Shock. That was when I got jumped in. Didn't really get jumped in, but so the vinyl was a big thing. But like, what is it? Like, we were all still working full-time jobs. Some of the guys were working a couple of jobs. You know, we started having kids, and it was like, as far as success goes in music, I feel like the success is not, you know, really what we did then. It's like seeing
the fruit of it.
Which is cool.
What do you think the difference is, the biggest difference between putting out music then and putting out music now? I mean, again, we talk
accessibility, about accessibility. I think that's huge, man. And I think, you know, you guys and the Humble Beast guys and a couple others, like, really use social media to your advantage and really put things out right. I think it's in the execution too, as far as, you know, we know people have instant access to everything now, and you guys being able to, you know, use that to your advantage I think is great, man. We didn't have all that back then. I mean,
we barely was word of mouth and shows.
Barely had email. I remember we had a Juno account, and my first computer wasn't even mine. It was Just Me's computer. He left it at my house, and it was like the black screen with the green text, and you had to get those AOL discs to get your free minutes or whatever. And it was just, I mean, it's different now, man. But I think, you know, the social media thing is crazy, man. You know, and to be able to use that to your advantage is huge.
Yeah, that's good. You know, I think having the best of both worlds. Right. Like, if artists can take the hustle and the grind of that era, the late 90s, early 2000s era, and use that hustle and that grind and that, like, I'm going to get my friends to ride with me and promote my stuff and get behind the music, but I'm also going to leverage social media, SoundCloud, YouTube, right? There's just so many outlets now. Like when artists can find the best of both worlds, I'm gonna hit the local open mics, but I'm also gonna shoot really cool music videos, you know, and make stuff that spreads. Like when artists can figure out, like I think that's the recipe today for something powerful.
I think you definitely, it just has to start with like, do you really believe in your craft and do you really love music?
Right.
And if you don't, define success as in numbers with the music, or like you find the value in music, you're progressing music. If you see that as an artist, I think that's what's going to make you stand out.
Right.
And naturally, everything's just going to come out of you.
Right. Yeah, and the dope music will always rise to the top. Like the fresh stuff, especially today. Like the coolest stuff will always. It may not sell 1 million records, but it'll make a splash, even if it's just locally. You know.
Yeah.
And so I think that's dope. You touched on working full-time jobs, having families. What are the benefits? Like you said, you didn't go full-time, right? Like this wasn't your main thing. What did not going full-time afford you?
Well, it was definitely a lot less pressure, right? Because it was like we unfortunately sometimes we took more time than we should have, but you learn real quick that if you don't put something out, you'll be forgotten like by next week. But it allowed us to really create what we wanted to create and not sacrifice the home life, right? Because that's hard, man. And for us at that time, like now you can go on tour and make some good dough. Back then it was like cold pizza, warm soda, right? Like we're driving all the way to Arizona. We're doing like, I think we literally one day, we did like 4 shows in 24 hours in 2 states driving.
Yeah.
So you might have been around.
I was around. I remember you guys telling me about that.
Yeah, because we did 2 shows.
Wasn't Ajax getting footage of it?
In Oceanside. I can't even remember. That whole night was weird.
Yeah.
But we did 2 shows in Oceanside, drove straight to Arizona, it was actually 5. We did a radio show and then like an open mic thing and then another show at a park. And really, we came back with nothing. I mean, they fed us, and for us, it was like exposure, and they always feed you that line, hey, I don't have any money, but I'll get you exposure. Yeah. Now it's like, I don't need you for exposure. Right. Like, we're handling our own stuff. Right. But yeah, so it was different having to go on the road because it wasn't as good financially. Yeah. So we worked regular jobs. Sometimes, people will work odd jobs just to make ends meet. But for us, it was important to be able to put out the type of music we wanted. You might know about this. I don't know how many other people do. But we tried to record a record that we thought would be commercially accepted, right? Under the name Foolish Things, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
And we recorded a whole record, and I think Red still has a spindle of burned CDs, which I want to try to get a hold of one. We recorded a whole record, listened to it, and we're like, man, this isn't us.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to put this out, And that was the type of stuff, like, if we didn't have regular jobs, that would have been a waste of time and we would have had to try to put that out and try to make some money on that. So
that's so good. So you're less desperate.
Yeah.
You're less desperate. You have stability.
Yeah.
Right. You have
benefits.
Yeah. Right. You got health insurance. You can have a mortgage. You can buy a house. You can do some really cool stuff that if you're living the grind of like, I got to do 100 shows a year, I got to be gone, I got to do all these other things, it just takes away some of those opportunity. And the cool thing I think about you is you've always been bivocational. Like, it's never been like, all right, I'm just never going to do the stuff I'm passionate about and I'm just going to, just work this job. And you know what I mean? Like you were doing the ACH Clothing, right, with Lawrence, and you had the label, right? You guys put out some of Propaganda's early stuff.
Actually, that label,
what was the label
started
called?
Audio Sketchbook.
Audio Sketchbook, you had the label.
So I started that label to put out a propaganda project because
you put out 1 or 2? I thought it was 2.
One.
Right.
So originally, Syntax didn't want to sign Propaganda because he hadn't been touring enough. And, you know, I kind of felt like, dang, that's janky. This dude,
he's dope.
First of all, he's dope. But at that time, we built a really strong relationship. He was my best friend, right? So I was like, you know what? I have access to this stuff. You put out dope stuff. Let's just start a label. We'll put out Listen, Watch, Focus. And so we started it for that. Just to try to give some of these artists an outlet where it benefited them. You know, I'm able to use what I have, and they're able to continue to put out music.
So you did the label, and then ACH Clothing, right? And now you're doing a new project, Fearful Wonder.
Fearful Wonder.
Tell us about that.
So really what we wanted to do, I have a problem sitting still. So it's one of those things where I always have to be doing something. And after the label kind of ended, my wife was like, hey, I want to start a business. First thing I told her was, cool, but I'm only going to do it if it's going to benefit someone else, because I don't want the pressures of like trying to be it's one of those ideas of like you start a business with the intention of making money. Then when you don't make money, you get all bummed and it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I said, I don't want to do that. Let's do something that's doing something. So we came up with this idea because, you know, if you go around downtown Oceanside, you see a lot of homeless teens. You see a lot of this stuff happening in our own city. And I thought, well, let's start a clothing and accessory line that will benefit some of these programs we have in our community. So we, Sojourn's wife, actually works with the YMCA. So she was able to connect us with the Youth and Family Services. So 20% of everything we sell goes back to them to help fund their programs. And really it's been cool and fulfilling, like for us to be able to give back, you know, to be able to use our creativity and connections to help someone else, you know, because we both have really good jobs and we're not in need of making more money. It's like, so why not share that, you know, with our own community. So.
That's so cool. And like you said, like having jobs affords you to do certain things genuinely out of overflow, genuinely out of, there's an abundance and you guys are solid financially because you're not living show to show, royalty check to royalty check, and you have a level of stability.
What's a royalty check?
You have a level of stability, and then you could project and say, we want to do a business, but we don't want it to be about us. We actually want to help people with this extra stuff that we're doing. And then even the stuff that you're doing, your son is here with us, right? Even the stuff you're doing with coaching soccer and right, and all these different, I walked in and you and my wife were talking about starting leagues and all this, like right, like I'm like, dude, like that's stuff that I'm in a position where I am doing what I love to do full time. But there's certain sacrifices I have to make. Right. Like we went on this last Good Religion tour and I came back and you know, Levi is saying new words.
He had a mustache.
He's doing new things, right? Like, and I'm just like, yo, like I missed out on a month that I'll never get back. And is this really worth it? Like, is this really worth it to do that? And so I got to rethink of just like, how am I going to tour? Like, I don't want to tour anymore unless I could bring them. Which makes it super difficult, you know? I don't want to be gone for 3 weeks at a time or 6 weeks at a time. But you've been able to be super engaged in your kids' development, right? They're both great kids. They both love the Lord and are in church. What's that been like? Again, not needing to hustle and grind and do all this stuff to make ends meet and barely survive, but you have good jobs and stability. What's that been like with
I mean,
soccer?
it's cool. I think we felt like as parents, it was important to be there, you know, and early on, before we even had kids, I had told Karen, like, I want to make sure that we're in a position where we can spend time with them, you know, because I know growing up, like, my dad had to work a couple jobs, my mom was working, no one was really around, and I know what that allowed me to do, and some of the things that I had to go through, I don't want them to have to go through, right? I remember telling my boss, I'm not working overtime unless I have to, because one, I don't need it, and two, I don't want to be here all the time while my kids are at home.
Yeah.
You know, so it's been cool, and it's all like, I mean, being able to start working on this soccer league or doing things like that, like my daughter's getting into fashion, and being able to support them in that is like, it's pretty cool feeling to be able to be a part.
Yeah.
The other thing too is, man, seeing them grow up wanting to help others.
Yeah.
You know, like I know Damien, he just raised quite a bit of money for this Starving to Serve campaign that they were having at church. And if anybody knows him, knows that he eats like the entire fridge at the house in like 2 days. So for him to go, how long was it? 24 hours, 30 hours?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was quite a few. He doesn't remember. It was quite a few.
He blacked it out.
It was like over a
Dark
day.
time.
Yeah. Don't remind me that. But without eating. I mean, and that's huge. And we didn't tell him. He was like, hey, Dad, I want to do this. And he went around and he was, you know, doing work or whatever needed to happen to raise this money. And to see them grow up with that type of heart too is like really, really dope, and supporting their friends and really being caring, I think, you know, is huge for us. And we just want to make sure that we're a part of their lives without being the overbearing, like super strict parents.
Yeah.
You know, we set down the rules, we give them the opportunities to succeed and to fail.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
because I think if they don't fail, then they'll never know what it's like to come back from that.
I think it's very difficult to even just see the free time we have. Because as a younger person, like I don't see how you have all the time for all of that, to coach and be quote unquote bivocational and then also raise a family. To me, that's like, yo, you have no time.
Remember when I told you I like coffee? That's why. Yeah, but I mean, it's cool, you know. They say when you do what you love, you don't work a day in your life, right? And this soccer stuff, I was just talking to your wife actually about, I grew up hating soccer.
Really?
Yeah. Because my dad would watch it 24 hours a day. We had like the big embarrassing antenna on top of the house so he could get all the games. And you know, it wasn't until he got into it and he started playing, and then, you know, I got suckered into coaching, and then it was like, oh, that was cool. And for me, I felt like it's more than soccer. Like it's for me, it's being able to invest in the youth and try to give them tools through soccer for them to become, you know, strong young men. And so, I mean, it keeps you busy, and it's, you know, sometimes my wife is not a fan of it, but I think we understand what the goal is there, you know, we understand the benefits.
Right. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs, aspiring creatives that, you know, maybe they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, and they're processing some of this stuff, right? Like how I want to go.
If they should work a second job.
Yeah, like what would advice? Because I mean, here you are. Like Eric makes a great point. Like you work right hard, right? You coach soccer. You still have your line on the side. Like you do a lot, and you're raising a family and you're engaged. What advice would you give to younger people? That are just like, I think I want to do something with music or art or clothing. Like, what advice would you give now being on the other side of this whole thing?
Yeah. I think, first of all, like we said earlier, is really, what is your goal? Like, define your success, right? Is it going to be money? Is it going to be happiness? Whatever it is, define that. Pursue it, and don't be afraid to fail. I think part of what we did as Soul Seekers and Future Shock is we were afraid to fail in some aspects, and I think it held us back. And at that time, we didn't really know, you know, what to expect, but don't be afraid to fail. And just, if you really believe in it, get back up and charge it again, you know, because it's not going to be easy. And you know this. I mean, you didn't get here because one day you woke up and was like, cool, I'm doing this. It's hard, and figure out, you know, what the sacrifices are. If you're willing to do them, then do them. You know?
You know, Jesus said, like, what is it worth to gain the whole world and lose your soul?
Lose your soul.
You know, and in everything you do in life, I think we have to know that we're making a trade-off. We're making a trade-off, time for money, right? We're making a trade-off, all the time our attention, our focus. And so, you know, I think we have to be careful. Like, what is that main thing? You know, like what does it really all mean at the end of the day?
Right.
You know, if you're a parent and your kids love Jesus and they're great kids and you're happy, like, dude, just do what that is, you know?
Yeah.
But I think we've seen this over and over, man. Like, we've seen guys get to that level. We've seen guys get to I'm a full-time artist, you know, I'm doing it, I'm living the dream, and then they're gone 200 shows a year and their marriage falls apart.
Yeah.
Their kids don't know them, right? And at the end of the day, like, that's the main thing. Before you're ever on some platform trying to be a entertainer, like, are you visible in your own home and in your own platform, man? And so I've personally, like, this is stuff I'm processing and I'm convicted by, and it's tough, man. It's tough to think about these types of things, and, like, again, just wanting to be more present, wanting to be more engaged. So I think, you know, hopefully this episode encourages you guys in that not everybody needs to be full-time with their craft all the time
to be successful.
Right,
I mean, really you set that marker.
Whatever success is to you is what matters.
The point, your goal to your gift,
right?
That type of stuff.
Totally. And in this era, like, I do believe that, like, with all the technology that's afforded to us that you guys didn't have, like, I do believe that we can see more and more people be creative entrepreneurs full-time, make a decent living, be happy, but you don't have to, right? You don't need to do, if that's not what you feel you're called to do, or if you're not willing to make some of the sacrifices, you know, and me and my wife were, like, poor for a number of years, you know what I mean? Like, just struggling. Like, it was hard to finally get to this place of, like, okay, cool, we're good, we have some money in the bank, but we're not balling out. Like, I drive a 1999 Oldsmobile that needs a new battery. It doesn't have AC. You know, that's my Dave Ramsey car.
It goes nowhere.
You know, my wife drives a 2006 Hyundai Tucson, you know, with 200,000 miles on it. So, like, we're not balling out by any stretch of the imagination, and there's sacrifices that we have to make.
Right.
And so I think it's just, like, what is success for you, and what are those sacrifices, and are you willing to make those? And especially if you're an artist, like, man, if you're an artist and you're trying to be a full-time artist and you have a family, you better tread very carefully.
Yeah.
You better tread very carefully, because the traditional route is to go out and do 100 shows a year, 200 shows a year. And you just better tread very lightly and be very careful and watch over what God's entrusted you. And the main thing should always be your relationship with God, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your kids, and then your calling or vocation or whatever. And so, man, Eric, you got anything?
Yeah, one last question. How do you feel about Messi's retirement from the International League?
Well, after he missed that penalty that hard, dude.
Nodding.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it is what it is, man. I think it's smart when you know when it's time to hang it up.
Yeah.
You know, and he's a phenomenal player. So to hear that, it's like, well, it goes back to this. It's like maybe he feels like he was at a point of success and it's time for him to let that go to the next guy. You know, I mean, that was rough to watch too, that last PK, and then hearing the news, it was like, dang, that dude.
Well, even talking about that, like, I think you see this in entertainment, you see this in sports, right? People peak out in their late 20s to mid 30s, right? And you peak out financially, you peak out on your status and your success level, right? But most entrepreneurs or business guys really make the bulk of their money in their 40s and their 50s. You know, so if you're starting out and you're an artist and you're like, okay, that it does not work, like, dude, God can rewire that into something totally different that you're not even capable of understanding at 25 and 35. That by the time you're 45, you might have the $1 million business. You know what I mean? You might have the whatever that goal is.
Right.
So I think, like, we just, like, our culture is very, like, now, today, young is cool, and if you're not, but that, like, he can go on and do something totally different.
It's definitely not the end.
Make more money potentially, be more fulfilled.
I think what I was the most sad about was, like, my son was like, oh yeah, you know, he talks about these soccer guys. Oh yeah, they're kind of old. They're ready to retire. They're pretty old. And I'm like, yeah, how old are they? Oh, 28. And I'm like, like what? Man, I must be a dinosaur to their friends. They're like, our coach is way old. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I don't think that's the last we'll hear of Messi. I mean, like you said, that it's not just like soccer's over, he's done. He's going to move on.
Or Kobe. Like Kobe's 37, 38 years old. And it's like, that's it. It's a wrap for Kobe. Like, Kobe could do whatever he wants. Kobe could be the next action movie star if he wanted to be. Like, he could literally do whatever
those
he wants.
commercials kind of sketch, though.
Like commercial. I saw that. So I think the older I'm getting, I'm 31 now, the older I'm getting, I'm just like, yo, it's not, I got so much left in me and I got so much more to go. And I feel like I'm just now approaching like my best work creatively. And I actually have the business chops to balance it out.
And if your success is definitely defined something beyond just like making good music, or like if it's in like making a movement or making a mark in music to progress the art, like you definitely can keep going after you're done making music.
Totally. And you could help put other people on, right? You started a label. I started a label, right? You helped Propaganda build his first, platform. Like really, when he started bubbling was because of Audio Sketchbook, or one of the reasons. Because of Audio Sketchbook. But he's talented and he's a genius.
And I think Tunnel Rat, the name Tunnel Rats alone was really the main reason. Right. I was just able to help, fund a project and put out a project for him. But yeah, I mean, it's really reaching out, man. Just because you're done doing one thing doesn't mean you're done doing all things. Yeah,
that's good.
So,
man, this has been dope, man. Thank you, Capsteel Elusive. Next time we're gotta get some more words from your son here.
Good luck.
Talks way too much.
I mean, if you guys have like a text interview, he'll all day. he'll say all things. But yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Man, thank you guys so much. King's Dream Podcast episode 4. Hey, if you enjoyed this podcast, do us a favor. Go to the podcast app in the iTunes section of your phone. Subscribe there. Follow us on SoundCloud. And when you subscribe, go in and leave a review and a comment. We'd love to hear what you guys think about the podcast.
I like that.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week. Peace.